I am now living between the USA and Colombia, with this being the first time I'm living abroad. Most people that relocate to a new country do so for economic opportunities or personal reasons like love and fulfillment of their wish list. Usually the change offers up new advantages. However, no place in the world is perfect. In today's video, I'm going to discuss the downside and disadvantages of my experience moving abroad and some things you might expect to experience. If you're interested in global living and want more of this content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn your notification bell on so you don't miss a thing. Another huge thing that you could do for me is click the like button on this video, which signals to YouTube that the content is good and it helps me significantly. On this channel, I discuss living globally along with business hacks in real estate and healthcare, showing you the path so you can do the same. I want you to be able to live your dreams. My name is Carl Pierre, and this is ENTP Life. As a self-proclaimed foodie and cook, the biggest disadvantage of living in Colombia is limited access to diverse restaurants and ingredients. I already know what you Colombians are thinking. Our food is great, natural, blah, 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 but let me explain what I mean. The majority of paisas, or the Medellin locals, they are used to eating rice, beans, cheese, eggs, and meat virtually every meal, every day, right? That is like the typical paisa diet. And because it's really a farming community, I would say, Medellin itself is a city, but outside of Medellin are a bunch of farms, and the food that are readily produced on those farms is what's readily consumed by the majority of people. Now, the food culture here is just starting to emerge and is going to be most diverse in the Zona Rosa, or like in the Parque Lleras area, where you have all the tourist restaurants and all the hotels. And that's where you're gonna find some diversity in food. You have restaurants like Bay, OCI, Carmen's, where they're kind of drawing from international flavors and international foods and bringing that cultural diversity to the cuisine of Medellin. But if you talk to like your traditional paisa, they may not be so hip to eating raw fish, for instance. That's not something that they're used to. They don't really even eat much seafood here because it is an inland city. That's one of the things that I have a really hard time with. The other piece is that the supermarkets are stocked with foods that are typical of the region. So the people, since they don't really eat much seafood, you really don't have many fish options here. You're gonna have tilapia, trout, and imported salmon. Some shrimp that's been frozen for I don't know how long. You just don't have many fresh seafood options. Even though Colombia borders the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific coast, they just don't have a big seafood culture here in Medellin. And it's really hard to get fish. And I really like seafood, I really like fish. And another thing that's hard to get are like Asian influenced spices, or even a variety of chilies. I'm used to eating spicy food, and I'm used to eating culturally diverse food. And since the gastronomic scene here in Colombia isn't big on all these international foods, you're not gonna just find these things in the supermarket quite easily. Like there isn't an international food section in the supermarkets the way that there is in the United States, where you can find your Mexican products, Asian products, Indian products, your Middle Eastern products all in the same aisle. That doesn't exist here. So it's hard for me to get some of the spices that I need or some of the things that I want to make some food. For example, if I want to make Thai food, I have to get my curry from the United States to bring it down and make Thai food. I could find coconut milk here because that's used commonly, but I'm not going to be able to find Asian basil, for instance. It's just not one of the things that are going to be readily available at the supermarket. And that's my biggest pain point, or at least the biggest disadvantage that I found in living here in Colombia, considering that food is something that's like at the core of who I am. Not having those options really frustrates me. Actually, on this last trip, I was just in Florida. I came back with a suitcase full of spices and hot sauce, because down here, Colombians don't really like spicy food, like picante. It's just not a thing. And they don't really like very herby food either. Some people complain that Colombian food is bland. I kind of understand where they're coming from, because they really don't use a diverse mix of spices when compared to like Indian food, for instance, which is going to be very spice heavy. So that's what I mean by lacking diversity and lacking a really good food scene. I love Colombian food too. However, I have to travel with my Scotch bonnet pepper sauce so I could spice up my beans, things like that. And that's really one of the things that I miss about the States and I find to be a disadvantage. And it's not just here, it's going to be in every country. Every country has their local foods. The United States is different in that it's a nation totally of immigrants, and there's such a large population of almost every immigrant group, especially in a city like New York or LA or even Miami, where there's going to be enough demand for these internationally sourced foods and spices to find them readily in whatever neighborhood you're in. Like New York, for instance, I could go to Jackson Heights and find all the Indian spices that I need. I could go to Flushing, find everything that I need that's Asian. I could go to Bensonhurst and find Russian delicacies. That doesn't happen here just because the communities aren't that large. Another thing that takes some getting used to is the pace of living. Every nation has its own rhythm, and Colombia is no exception. The Spanish culture and all the colonies that are derived from the Spanish culture all have this fairly relaxed attitude towards life and work. And that is something that I have a really hard time with. I enjoy the fact that here in Colombia, they really care about their time off and their holidays, because that means family time. It means an opportunity to travel for the weekend. But there are a lot of holidays here, and the rhythm and the mindset towards work is a lot different than the rhythm and mindset of work in a city like New York, right? I lived about 37 years in New York City, where everything is about money, everything's on the move, everything is quick. And there's no time to kind of relax, really. And it's something that's really part of who I am. From the time that I wake up to the time that I go to sleep, my mind is active, thinking about how I'm going to perform at work the next day, what I could do to enhance my income or reduce my expenses. It's a nonstop cycle of thinking, how can I improve my work life and how can I improve my business? For a lot of people here in Colombia, work ends at 4, 5 o'clock when they punch out, and they could care less about what happens with the company. It's completely different than the American way. And I've seen this in a lot of the South American countries, because for the most part, the South American countries are either Spanish colonies, or for Brazil, which is massive, a Portuguese colony, and they also have the same sort of culture where it's kind of make time for yourself first, relax. Italy, which I cover here on the channel a little bit, same sort of thing. It's kind of like all the romantics are more laid back, concerned with the quality of life, more so than they are about making their money and getting things done. Like, my staff that watches this might get annoyed with this comment, but I could see my employees kind of chatting at work, and that chatter will go on for like 15 minutes, and I start to get like tense about the chatter. And I understand like people need to kind of communicate and have fun at work, but when I get to work, I lock in. I really don't care about chit chat, and I see that as like a lack of production, and feel like, wow, that 15 minutes could have been used to do X, and that X could have produced X amount of dollars. And if they thought this way and they were able to monetize that downtime, or even after hours after work, if they were to work beyond 5 o'clock and figure out ways that they could bring more value to my companies, they would be compensated more. But they would rather not be compensated more and just go home. It's completely different than the American mindset, where a lot of Americans would trade their family time, trade their personal time for career advancement and financial gain. And that's just not the way that it is here. So that pace of go, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle doesn't quite exist as much here. And like I said, it's good and bad, because I kind of like to be able to ease up a bit, let off the gas a little bit. But at the same time, when I'm in go mode, it's kind of hard for me to find others that are kind of trying to move in that same pace, that same rhythm. So that's another disadvantage of living abroad. The next disadvantage is a double-edged sword and has to do with economic development and the wealth gap. Economically, things are very different here in Colombia than in the United States. Again, it's kind of goes hand in hand with how the United States is really work-oriented and money-driven, more so than they are about kind of being driven by the passions in life. Here, things just don't line up, to me, in a sensible way economically. I'll give you an example. Labor costs in Colombia are really low, and they have access to a lot of natural resources. So you would think that a lot of products are produced locally. And when products are produced locally by low-cost labor, and since a lot of people don't get paid much, you would expect products to be fairly cheap as well here. And what I find is that a lot of the products are imported from China and other countries and slapped with heavy taxes. So rather than having people work and manufacture things locally, cars are produced internationally, televisions and computers are produced internationally, and not much is made here, and it drives the price of everything higher than what it should be. You figure the average income in the United States is a lot higher, maybe 4 times higher than the average income here in Colombia, yet a TV costs 50% more in Colombia than it does in the US. So it's really weird to me that I could get a TV for $300, $400 in the States, and that same exact TV is gonna cost me $600 or $700 here in Colombia. Meanwhile, somebody might be earning $700 a month. So how long is it gonna take them to cover their cost of living and then buy a TV? They might be saving for a TV for a year. And to me, that seems really unusual when you have resources and you have this cheap labor here. I think there's really something really screwy going on here, and that needs to be adjusted. My thinking is that since the government is generating so much money on tariffs and there is this demand for goods, that's their way of kind of shoring up the budget in a way, but it's really at the detriment of the people. And to me, that just doesn't seem right and has to change and can change. Colombia could be a manufacturing powerhouse if they kind of shifted in that way. Think about all the products that come from China and India and South Asia, all the way to the United States to be shipped and distributed, when products could be produced right here in South America, like they are in Mexico, for instance, and also shipped into the United States with eased tariffs and taxes. It should be the same here. I just don't understand why it's this way. The only logical thing is the government benefits, and that's how they're making money. The other thing that is related to economics that I don't really like, and I see as a disadvantage here, is that since the nation isn't quite money driven, certain concepts are foreign to the people, and also wealth building is not quite a thing here. So in the United States, you might have people who are 18 years old already talking about building credit, building wealth, investing in the stock market, investing in cryptocurrencies. Just the economic IQ of the average person in the US is higher than it is here. And you also see like these huge divides in wealth where the majority of the people in Colombia are low earners, and then you have a small slice of really high earners, and it's quite lopsided. You'll see a lot of poverty in the streets. You'll see a lot of people who are working class, but don't have the same access to just better lifestyle. Like in the United States, the average is middle class. Here, I would say the average is like lower middle class to poverty. And I think that's a problem because again, there's not that much exchange of ideas as far as wealth creation is concerned amongst the majority of people. And you also are exposed to in direct contact with poverty often. And that may lead to increased crime and increased tension between the haves and have-nots. And that is common in a lot of the countries. Like the United States has a really robust, vibrant working middle class. And because of that, life is kind of comfortable and easy for the majority of people. Here, it's not that way. And you're gonna be face to face with that all the time. So if you're kind of turned off by that or squeamish to that, moving to another country may put you in direct contact with that more and more. Like in the United States, you don't come across pockets of poverty as frequently. They exist, but you could be isolated in your little perfect bubble in suburban America and never really see the reality of economic mismatches and the wealth gap firsthand. I hope you found this information helpful as you plan to relocate to Colombia or really any other country in the world. Always keep in mind that things will be different than your home country, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. As long as you're flexible and approach your new home with an open mind, you'll be able to adapt. Thanks again for joining me here on ENTP Life. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.